The winter of 1938 in Berlin was unlike any other. The air was thick with tension, the drums of war already echoing across Europe, but within the shadowy chambers of the SS, a very different obsession gripped the imagination of Heinrich Himmler and his inner circle. This was not the kind of obsession that could be measured in tanks or artillery, but one tied to ancient prophecies, lost civilizations, and the promise of forbidden power. Himmler, a man consumed by mysticism and convinced that history itself was shaped not just by politics but by esoteric forces, believed that somewhere hidden beyond the Himalayas lay a secret that could grant the Third Reich dominion over the world. That secret had a name whispered across centuries: Shambhala. Legends from Tibet, India, and Central Asia described Shambhala as a hidden kingdom, a place unreachable by ordinary men, where the wisdom of the ages was guarded by an enlightened people. Some texts described it as a physical city concealed in the mountains, others as an inner world accessible only through gateways hidden in sacred valleys. To Himmler, who had already established the Ahnenerbe, an institute dedicated to uncovering the so-called ancestral heritage of the Aryan race, Shambhala represented more than myth. It was a target, a destination, and perhaps the final key to unlocking what he and Hitler believed was a lost wellspring of power. The seeds of this obsession were planted decades earlier. In the 1920s, German occult societies like the Thule Society and the Vril Society had fixated on Eastern mysticism, blending half-digested translations of Tibetan texts with their own racial myths. Writers circulated rumors of hidden masters in the Himalayas who guided world events, and whispers grew that these masters possessed technologies far beyond anything modern science had achieved. When Hitler came to power in 1933, such ideas were no longer confined to fringe circles, they began to shape state policy. Within the SS, expeditions were organized, artifacts were sought, and ancient maps were collected with the same seriousness as military intelligence reports. In 1938, Himmler approved a mission led by zoologist and SS officer Ernst Schaefer to Tibet. Officially, the expedition was scientific, collecting flora, fauna, and ethnographic data. Unofficially, it carried a darker purpose. Schaefer's team was tasked with investigating Tibetan legends of Shambhala and Agartha, searching for hidden tunnels, and, most intriguingly, acquiring ancient maps said to chart routes into these forbidden realms. The Nazis believed that if Shambhala existed, it could hold the secrets of virile energy, an infinite power source that occultists claimed could grant mastery over both man and machine. Possession of such knowledge could tilt the balance of the coming war. The expedition left Germany in April 1938, traveling through British India under the guise of scholarly work. But in the diaries and coded reports later uncovered, there were hints of something more. The team carried not only scientific instruments but also crates of obscure manuscripts, gathered through contacts in Berlin who had scoured monasteries and private collections for references to hidden cities. These texts described labyrinths beneath the earth, entrances concealed by mountains, and diagrams that bore uncanny resemblance to Tibetan mandalas. Schaefer himself, though skeptical of Himmler's mystical leanings, was under strict orders to follow any lead connected to Shambhala. When they arrived in Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, they were greeted with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Tibet was a land fiercely protective of its secrets, and foreigners were rarely welcomed into its most sacred spaces. Yet somehow, through negotiation, bribery, and perhaps the intervention of sympathizers, the Nazis gained access to libraries within monasteries that were normally closed to outsiders. Among the manuscripts they studied were the Kalachakra texts, esoteric writings that spoke of cycles of time, cosmic battles, and a hidden kingdom that would reveal itself at the end of an age. It was here that the first tantalizing clues began to emerge, cryptic references to maps that were not maps in the conventional sense, but diagrams of energy lines stretching across the earth. These maps were unlike anything the Germans had seen before. Instead of borders and rivers, they showed points of convergence, places where the Earth's energies intersected like veins in a living body. Some of these points aligned with known sacred sites, Lhasa itself, Mount Kailash, and distant locations in India and Mongolia. But there were other markings, strange spirals and symbols that suggested hidden entrances, gateways into the underworld. The monks who guarded these texts spoke only in riddles. They hinted that Shambhala could not be reached by brute force, that only those with spiritual merit could find it. But to the Nazis, steeped in the pursuit of power, the idea of secret tunnels and subterranean passages offered a more practical interpretation. One evening, deep in the candlelit chamber of a monastery, Schaeffer and his team were shown a scroll said to have been copied from a far older manuscript, preserved for centuries in secrecy. On its yellowed surface, painted in inks that shimmered oddly in the dim light, was a map. Not of Tibet as Western cartographers knew it, but a diagram of concentric rings, valleys, and hidden corridors winding into a central mandala. At the heart of the mandala was a symbol, a blazing wheel surrounded by 8 lotus petals. The monks said it represented Shambhala. Schaeffer, cautious by nature, noted every detail, but he could not ignore the chill that ran through him as he realized that the layout bore a striking resemblance to the diagrams favored by German occult societies, the same wheels and lotus patterns that had appeared in the archives of the Thule Society years earlier. What disturbed him even more was what followed. The monks explained, or perhaps warned, that many had sought Shambhala before. Kings, warlords, seekers of knowledge, all had failed, for the road was guarded by trials both physical and spiritual. Yet they admitted that in rare cases, certain individuals had been granted passage, disappearing into mountains and never returning. Schaeffer, ever the scientist, wrote these accounts down with detachment, but within the SS, such stories were treated with the utmost seriousness. For Himmler, it was confirmation that Shambhala was not a fantasy but a reality, one that could be reached, mapped, and exploited. As the expedition continued, rumors spread that the Germans had discovered more than they admitted. Villagers whispered of strange rituals conducted at night, of the foreigners digging in caves and measuring mountains with instruments that hummed and glowed. Some claimed the team carried with them fragments of an older map, pieced together from Mongolian sources, which when aligned with the Tibetan scrolls revealed a path leading north into uncharted valleys. Whether these stories were true or inventions born of fear, they soon made their way back to British intelligence, who began to suspect that the Nazis were not simply collecting butterflies and botanical specimens. By the time the expedition returned to Germany in 1939, Europe was on the brink of war. Official reports spoke of zoological discoveries, rare plants, and ethnographic data. But within the SS, secret files circulated describing coded diagrams, photographs of scrolls, and the possibility of a route to Shambhala hidden in the high Himalayas. Some accounts even suggested that Schaeffer's team had returned with an artifact, a small carved object resembling a key, its surface etched with symbols that no one could decipher. Himmler was reportedly fascinated, keeping it locked away in a private chamber and showing it only to a handful of trusted advisors. What the Nazis had truly found in Tibet remains shrouded in mystery. Some historians argue that the expedition's occult goals were exaggerated, that Schaeffer was a scientist coerced into fulfilling Himmler's fantasies. Yet the persistence of the Shambhala legend within SS circles, combined with post-war testimonies from captured officers, suggests otherwise. In those final months before the world plunged into chaos, the Nazis believed they were on the verge of discovering something extraordinary, a hidden map, a lost pathway, a key to Shambhala. And whether real or imagined, the obsession with that hidden kingdom would follow them even into the war, shaping secret projects and fueling conspiracies that endure to this day. The story does not end there. For as the Reich marched toward war, new expeditions were planned, secret tunnels were dug in the heart of Europe, and whispers grew that the Nazis had not only glimpsed the map to Shambhala but had begun to replicate what they believed they found, an occult cartography that promised access to power beyond imagination. And it was this belief, more than any battlefield strategy, that hinted at a darker war being waged in secret, a war for the hidden wisdom of the gods themselves. The year was 1938, and Europe trembled on the edge of war. Beneath the outward machinery of the Nazi regime, a far more shadowy obsession drove some of its most powerful men, the belief that the Aryan race was descended from a mythical civilization, and that proof of this could be found in the East. Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS and architect of the most brutal aspects of Nazi ideology, had long been consumed by a fascination with the occult. Through an esoteric division known as the Ahnenerbe, the SS Ancestral Heritage Research and Teaching Society, Himmler authorized expeditions across the globe. Their stated mission was scientific, but their true objective was something far stranger: to uncover traces of a lost world that could validate Nazi myth, and perhaps unlock technologies forgotten by time. And of all the legends whispered in the corridors of power, one name returned again and again: Shambhala. The first sparks of this obsession came from travelers and mystics who had spoken of a hidden city in Tibet, nestled deep within the Himalayas. Some claimed it was not a city but a realm, sealed off from ordinary mortals, where enlightened beings kept secret knowledge of the cosmos. Others described it as a stronghold of immense power, guarded by unseen forces. For the Nazis, it was not enough to dismiss such tales as mere folklore. Himmler saw in Shambhala a potential key, proof of an ancient race, perhaps more advanced than our own, from which the so-called master race could claim descent. With war looming, he believed such a discovery could tilt the balance of history. In July 1938, Himmler quietly approved the most ambitious of these quests, the German Tibet expedition. Led by zoologist and SS officer Ernst Schaefer, the mission was presented to the public as a scientific study of Tibet's wildlife, geography, and culture. But behind closed doors, Schaefer's orders were more complex. He was tasked with searching for ancient manuscripts, hidden caves, and above all, maps. Himmler believed that old Tibetan texts might preserve directions to Shambhala, just as ancient Indian scriptures like the Kalachakra Tantra described the kingdom in poetic, almost astronomical terms. When the expedition set out, its members carried strange instruments along with the usual scientific equipment. Schaefer had anthropometric tools for measuring skulls, for Himmler was obsessed with proving physical links between Tibetans and a supposed Aryan homeland. More unusually, the SS team carried radios capable of receiving low-frequency transmissions, believing that the vibrations of the Earth might point them toward geomagnetic anomalies, the hidden entrances to subterranean chambers. Their luggage also included a curious item, a set of maps copied from Nicholas Roerich, the Russian mystic and painter who had led expeditions through Central Asia a decade earlier. Roerich had been obsessed with Shambhala himself, claiming to have seen signs of it during his journeys, and his maps hinted at hidden valleys sealed by rock and ice. When Schaefer and his men arrived in Lhasa, they were received with surprising warmth by the Tibetan authorities. Photographs still survive of the SS officers in traditional Tibetan dress, attending ceremonies, and presenting gifts. Officially, the Germans spoke of friendship and scientific cooperation. Yet behind the scenes, they began a meticulous search of monasteries, poring over manuscripts, questioning lamas, and trying to decode the cryptic references to Shambhala scattered through Buddhist texts. Some monks entertained their curiosity, speaking in riddles about a land, north of the river Shita, south of the mountains of ice, where kings ruled for millennia. Others grew uneasy, warning that Shambhala was not a place to be found by those with impure intentions, for its guardians could destroy intruders with a single thought. In one particularly striking account, Schaefer and his team were shown a series of scrolls kept in a monastery library. The scrolls depicted circular diagrams, mandalas, that some believed were maps of the cosmos, but which Himmler's agents interpreted differently. They saw in the mandalas not spiritual symbols but technical schematics, encoded blueprints that might reveal hidden energy systems or subterranean tunnels. According to later testimonies, the Germans attempted to copy these scrolls in secret, smuggling reproductions back to Berlin. Whether they understood their meaning is another matter, but Himmler became convinced that the mandalas were not just works of art but actual guides to Shambhala. By early 1939, the expedition reached deeper into Tibet's high plateaus, guided by locals who spoke of valleys where compasses go mad, and mountains that no man dared climb. It was here, according to post-war rumors, that Schaefer's team made their most startling discovery. In a remote valley, shielded by glaciers, they found a cavern whose entrance was marked with strange inscriptions, not Tibetan, not Sanskrit, but something far older. The Germans recorded the markings, noting that they resembled ancient runes, though no clear translation was possible. Inside the cavern, they reportedly uncovered unusual relics, carved stones resembling star charts, metallic objects etched with symbols, and fragments of what seemed to be maps drawn on leather. Most tantalizing was a half-burned manuscript, written in a script no one recognized, but bearing a circular diagram eerily similar to the mandalas they had seen in the monasteries. Schaefer believed it was nothing less than a fragment of the legendary Book of Dizan, a text some theosophists had claimed contained records of a vanished super-civilization. What happened next has been the subject of decades of speculation. Some say the SS retrieved the artifacts and smuggled them back to Germany, where they vanished into the vaults of Himmler's Wewelsburg Castle, the headquarters of his occult circle. Others claim the team went further still, that they located coordinates pointing to a hidden valley said to be one of the gates to Shambhala itself. Whether or not they crossed into this valley remains unclear, but one detail recurs in multiple accounts, that the Germans returned to Berlin in 1939 with maps that did not exist before, maps that showed hidden passages beneath the Himalayas, marked with cryptic symbols. Back in Germany, Himmler was ecstatic. He told close aides that they had found proof of ancient Aryan presence in Asia and that Shambhala was no mere myth but a lost outpost of the master race. But as Europe plunged into war, the question remained, what exactly had they brought back? Some suggest the maps were genuine, coded charts pointing to underground chambers where lost knowledge was preserved. Others argue they were misinterpretations of Buddhist symbolism, twisted to fit Nazi ideology. Yet scattered evidence suggests the Nazis did believe they had uncovered something real. A 1942 SS memorandum, recovered after the war, referenced Geheime Karten aus Tibet, secret maps from Tibet, stored in a classified archive. Another document hinted at Die Stadt unter dem Eis, the city beneath the ice, linking the Tibetan discoveries with German interest in Antarctica, where rumors persist that the Nazis sought to build a hidden base. Perhaps the most chilling detail comes from the testimony of Allied intelligence officers after the war. In 1945, as the Allies ransacked Nazi archives, they discovered reports on Unternehmen Shambhala, Operation Shambhala. These reports described ongoing research into geomagnetic anomalies in Tibet and the possibility of harnessing them for new weapon systems. The project was never completed, cut short by Germany's defeat, but the documents suggested that the Nazis were still trying to decode the Tibetan maps as late as 1944. So, did the Nazis truly find a map to Shambhala? Or did they simply weave ancient symbols into their own mythos, driven by obsession rather than evidence? What is undeniable is that they searched, they collected, and they believed. And if the fragments of the maps still exist, buried in secret archives, hidden in monasteries, or perhaps lost forever, then they remain among the most enigmatic artifacts of the Second World War. For what those maps promised was not merely a hidden city, but access to knowledge so profound that, in the wrong hands, it could have changed the course of history. By 1940, the world was at war, and Nazi Germany's armies were sweeping across Europe with terrifying speed. But behind the battles, far from the public eye, Himmler and his SS circle continued to pursue something darker, the belief that Shambhala's knowledge could become a weapon of unimaginable power. While tanks rolled through France and the Luftwaffe bombed London, secret meetings were taking place in Wewelsburg Castle, where candlelit chambers echoed with whispered discussions of ancient maps, lost civilizations, and the key to a new order for the world. The maps retrieved from Tibet, whether authentic or not, had captured Himmler's imagination entirely. He believed they pointed not only to hidden valleys in the Himalayas but to vast networks beneath the earth itself, subterranean tunnels that could link Tibet, Central Asia, and perhaps even regions as far away as Antarctica. To the SS, these were not myths. They were roots of the ancients, pathways to a civilization that had once ruled the earth and might still exist, concealed from modern eyes. As the war intensified, Hitler himself grew skeptical of occult distractions, focusing instead on military campaigns. But Himmler pressed forward, convinced that Shambhala could hold secrets to advanced technology that could shift the war's balance. According to later testimonies from captured SS officers, small teams were dispatched to Tibet again in 1941 under the guise of diplomatic envoys. Their mission: to recover additional manuscripts, interrogate lamas, and decode the circular diagrams believed to be energy maps. One account tells of an SS officer who described a meeting with Tibetan monks in which a prophecy was recited. The prophecy spoke of a time when men from the West, armored in black, would seek the kingdom of Shambhala, but that their greed would blind them to its true purpose. The monks reportedly warned them that entry into Shambhala required not conquest but purity of heart, a concept completely alien to Himmler's ideology. Yet the SS ignored these warnings. They saw prophecy not as a spiritual lesson but as a puzzle to be solved, a coded message they could bend to their will. Meanwhile, the artifacts smuggled from Tibet were undergoing analysis in secret laboratories in Germany. Among them, according to scattered post-war reports, was a fragment of a metallic object etched with geometric patterns, unlike any known Tibetan artifact. Some German engineers speculated it was a piece of ancient technology, a device linked to virile energy, the mysterious life force described in occult circles. Rumors grew that the SS believed they had discovered hints of free energy, a limitless power source that could fuel weapons or machines unlike anything the Allies possessed. This obsession began to spill into other Nazi projects. In 1942, under the cover of the war in the East, Himmler initiated what he called Operation Shambhala. Using the maps retrieved by Schaefer's expedition, SS teams attempted to correlate Tibetan mandalas with geomagnetic surveys. Their conclusion, that the Himalayas contained entry points to an underground world. Some of these supposed entry points were marked on the maps with symbols resembling concentric circles, which German occultists interpreted as portals. Whether the Nazis ever attempted to physically reach such portals remains a mystery. But there are strange reports from the same year of German aircraft seen flying over the Tibetan plateau, far from any military front. Local villagers told stories of German officers setting up camps near sacred mountains, drilling into the rock, and leaving abruptly after weeks of silence. What they were searching for remains unclear, but the obsession with Shambhala had clearly escalated beyond mere myth. At the same time, a darker thread began to intertwine with the legend. The Nazis had long been fascinated by the idea of Agartha, another mythical subterranean world often associated with Shambhala. In some traditions, Shambhala was a realm of light, while Agartha was its mirror, a hidden kingdom beneath the earth. Some SS documents suggested that if Shambhala was a repository of divine wisdom, then Agartha might hold the remnants of a fallen civilization, one that had misused its power and destroyed itself. Himmler ordered his scholars to explore both legends, convinced that hidden within them lay truths that science had yet to rediscover. By 1943, however, the war had turned. Stalingrad had fallen, and Germany's dream of domination was crumbling. Yet Himmler's obsession did not waver. In fact, it grew stronger. Desperate for anything that could change the tide, he poured resources into projects connected to Shambhala. Within the archives of the Ahnenerbe, files were labeled with code names such as Operation Himalaya and Project Vril. These documents spoke of maps of subterranean passageways, diagrams of stellar alignments, and attempts to recreate ancient energy devices. Some reports even linked these efforts to Germany's secret weapons program. A few post-war investigators claimed that the infamous Die Glocke, the bell, a mysterious SS experiment said to involve anti-gravity or time manipulation, was inspired partly by symbols found in Tibetan manuscripts. While historians remain divided on whether Die Glocke ever existed, the connection between Nazi science and their occult expeditions remains one of the war's strangest enigmas. As Germany's defeat loomed closer, Allied intelligence began to take notice of these bizarre pursuits. In 1944, British and American intelligence officers intercepted reports of Nazi expeditions moving eastward with unusual cargo. Some speculated they were smuggling gold or stolen art, but others whispered of stranger things: boxes of ancient manuscripts, relics wrapped in silk, and strange metallic fragments. A handful of Allied reports even mention maps with circles and tunnels being shipped to secret facilities in southern Germany and Austria. The climax of this strange story came in 1945, when the Third Reich collapsed. As the Allies stormed Berlin, they captured archives that revealed the scope of the SS's obsession. Among the documents were references to Karten von Shambhala, maps of Shambhala, and Expedition Tibet. But the physical maps themselves were gone. Some say they were destroyed to prevent Allied capture, others believe they were spirited away by surviving SS officers who fled to South America or Antarctica. In the years that followed, scattered rumors suggested that Nazi fugitives carried fragments of these maps with them, convinced that one day they could still unlock the secrets of the hidden kingdom. The mystery deepens when we consider what Tibetan monks said after the war. A few Western visitors reported that monks in remote monasteries spoke quietly of the Germans, recalling their strange questions and their hunger for hidden knowledge. Some monks claimed the Nazis did indeed receive a map, but that it was a false one, deliberately designed to lead them astray. Others suggested that the monks showed them symbols of Shambhala not as directions, but as tests, knowing the Germans would misinterpret them. So where does the truth lie? Did the Nazis really find a genuine map to Shambhala? Or did they walk away with nothing but symbols they could not comprehend? The evidence is tantalizing but elusive. We know the expedition happened. We know artifacts were brought back. We know Himmler and the SS believed in Shambhala's reality. But what those maps truly contained if anything at all, remains one of history's most chilling unanswered questions. Even today, some conspiracy theorists argue that the Nazi obsession with Shambhala did not end in 1945. They suggest that secret societies, inheritors of the Ahnenerbe's archives, still guard fragments of those maps. Others claim that certain Nazi fugitives in South America whispered about the road to Shambhala until their dying days. And in the remote Himalayas, there are still valleys where compasses fail, mountains that no climber has ever scaled, and whispers of hidden kingdoms that watch from behind the veil of ice. Perhaps the Nazis never truly found Shambhala. Perhaps they were blinded by their own ambition, unable to grasp the spiritual truth behind the myth. Yet the fact that they searched, that they dedicated men, resources, and years of obsession to this quest, is in itself extraordinary. For it shows how far human belief in a legend can drive us, even into the darkest chapters of history. And so, the question lingers in the shadows of history. Did the Nazis stumble upon a fragment of forbidden knowledge, a map leading to something the world was never meant to see? Or was Shambhala itself guarding its secrets, giving them only illusions, as if to say, "You may look, but you will never find"?